Now, let's talk about what is happening with the Premier of Victoria, Jacinta Allan, and, of course, her Labor Party there. Now, even though it was a relatively easy win for them in the lower house last time, they actually didn't win a majority in the upper house. And as we know, the current public polling is terrible, so much so that if they do lose these two seats, we may well end up with a new Premier in Victoria in the next couple of months ahead of next year's state election. As you can see, the primary vote for the Labor Party, this is the state Labor Party, is now down to 22%, according to these polls. You can see it absolutely fall off a cliff in the past 12 months. You can see the Liberal Party is an absolute direct beneficiary. So unlike, say, the federal vote, where Labor is going down, the Libs are going up, but there's a whole bunch that's going to others, that is not being repeated in the state poll that we are looking at right now in Victoria. You can also see that over time, you can see when the government first came to power back in 2021, you can see the blue line going from the middle of the page to the bottom of the page, now to the top of the page, and the Labor Party going from the top of the page to the middle of the page to the bottom of the page. But what is really interesting to note, and this is where something is even bigger than the Victorian government, is that because they don't have a majority in the upper house, the only way they can get something passed regularly is with the support of Labor, Greens, and the legalised Cannabis Party. The legalised Cannabis Party got multiple people elected at the last state election. The Animal Justice Party also got someone elected, so they have a collection of people that they need to get on side before anything can be passed. Now, at that last state election, Greens and the legalised Cannabis Party, well, they were the ones who, as I said, are now going to form the majority, and here are two of those people. Now, interestingly, they have long said that if they don't get what they want, which is either the full legalisation of pot in Victoria or something very close to it, then they will no longer support the government, meaning it would have no regular guaranteed path of things through the upper house. This week, they were talking about how that they believe that every Victorian should be able to have 50 grams of marijuana for personal use and there be no problems with said happening. Now, I don't smoke pot, but let's be honest, there are many people who do in Australia. But more importantly, I want to talk about the politics of this legalised cannabis movement, because I think they're going to have quite an impact at certainly the state elections, but maybe the federal election as well. I'll get to that in a second. As for the people who are representing this move to 50 grams of it, we will leave absolutely... Will we leave anything in the locker room? Absolutely not. We're quite happy to push the envelope as hard as it needs to be pushed. If we can't agree, well, you know, we're not here for the catering. We're here to get things done, and we'll do what has to be done to get that done, which means they are willing to essentially maybe not vote for anything that the government is going to try to do in Victoria unless there is a change to marijuana laws in Victoria. Now, please don't think of this as me advocating that that's what should happen. I know what the consequences are of these things, but there are enough people in Victoria who are voting for that very thing to happen that a government that is desperate to hold on to every single vote they can, they may well cave and give this movement what it wants. You see, another thing about the legalised cannabis movement is that they, I think, are going to start taking some votes off the Greens. So maybe people who don't like the social policies, the housing policies, or the general douchiness of the Greens, they're going to go somewhere else. As personal popularity polling has shown us that the Greens are getting voters offside, Adam Bant particularly is in a world of pain. And one of the groups on the left that are going to take advantage of that is this legalised cannabis party. Now, they don't just have 2 MPs in Victoria, they've got 2 in Western Australia and 1 in New South Wales. So this is a national movement of people with enough support to get people elected to parliaments. This would mean that, as it follows, if you can get elected to a state parliament, then you can probably start to push your way towards the final Senate spot. And being of the left, preferences will flow to them through Labor, through the Greens, or up from Animal Justice. And there's every chance that we could end up with a legalised cannabis senator after the next election. Because if you have a look at this, 500,000 people voted for the legalised cannabis party at the last federal election. 125,000 were in New South Wales. That was more Senate votes than the Libertarians, the Shooters or Animal Justice. In Victoria, it was 114,000, more votes than the Libertarians, the Shooters or One Nation. In Queensland, they almost got one of the last Senate spots. Thankfully, it went to Pauline Hanson at the last election because they did have more votes than the Libertarian or Animal Justice. As for the actual number of people voting for these people in state elections, and again, please do not confuse me with suggesting that they are the answer to all of Australia's problems or that I think that their policy is the right way to go. But you're a fool if you don't actually understand what is happening in the electorate. And in the same way that there are lots of people who do coalesce around the Libertarian Party, who were former United Australia Party voters, and their preferences matter when it comes to the Liberal Party either forming minority government or maybe getting over the line. This also plays into the Labor Party. In the Victorian State Upper House election in 2022, they got 153,000 votes, which was more than the DLP or the Lib Dems, both of whom got elected themselves as well. The Shooters and One Nation. In New South Wales, they had more votes than the Lib Dems who got elected, the Shooters who got elected, and Animal Justice who got elected. And in Queensland, there is no upper house, so the only place you can look for there is what happened in the lower house, and in the 9 seats that they ran, there was 49,000, getting more votes in Queensland than Animal Justice or the Libertarian Party. So the point is this: may I make a prediction before your very eyes, no matter how glassy they may be, if you're liking the numbers that I've just shown you? I think there's going to be an increase in this vote, either because people think it's the right thing to do, or secondly, because maybe the Victorian government is going to be the first to go as close as possible towards legalising pot, or maybe because it's a way of voting left but not having to deal with the baggage of the Greens. But watch this space. They're going to go close to winning a Senate seat somewhere. Where? Let's all find out together on election night.